Hello and welcome back to AI for 2021. We're very excited for this presentation. Please give a very warm virtual round of applause for Debhashis. Welcome, Debhashis, to the virtual stage.
Thank you, Daniel and AI4 Forum, to give me the opportunity to share my thoughts and views on AI in clinical submission. So let me share my screen. So the topic of my talk would be artificial intelligence in clinical submission. So the background that why it's important. So the background is clinical submission is a part of clinical drug development, and it is a requirement, not an option, a requirement for getting the health authority approvals around the world. So in these clinical submissions, you need to develop clinical summaries, which in turns being developed by the data. And those data comes from clinical studies, and it is a resource intensive, specialized, involved, and time sensitive undertaking. So gaining efficiencies in developing these clinical summaries, clinical CSRs, and safety narratives is a paradigm shift that we can undertake in order to gain efficiency. And there we can have the help of AI if we could. So drug development process by nature is a very expensive proposition. So it could take anywhere between 700 millions to up to 2 billion, depending on the therapeutic area and the kind of molecules we are dealing with. So it starts with the first IND applications, and before the IND, we need to do preclinical testing, synthesis of the protein or the small molecules, animal testing, in vitro testing, and then it goes through the clinical processes, which is 3 phases are in general. There are variations of these, but in general 3 phases, phase 1, 2, 3. And then before the API, active pharmaceutical ingredient, become a drug, it goes through a process called NDA submission and approval. So the goal is that how we can gain efficiency so that our timeline becomes shorter and the operational cost becomes shorter. So that's the thing. That's the goal. We are continuously trying to achieve, titrate, optimize. We are not there yet. We are trying for that. So what is the clinical summary? What is clinical dossiers? So clinical dossiers are mainly composed of 4 pillars, if I may say so: in biopharmaceutics, clinical pharmacology, clinical efficacy, and clinical safety. Now, all these things goes into something called clinical overview, which is 2.5, which is actually proxy for the label. So label is something which we are all trying to get for a particular indication. And that's a very important thing, because by the label, the physicians are bound to prescribe it, means the dose, the safety concerns, the contraindications, and the indications. So all these 4 pillars contributing to clinical overview, and that becomes the proxy of label, and that's where the final label is being created. So and these clinical modules are actually a very standard structure that is defined by the ICH, that how it would be populated. It's true across the therapeutic areas, and it's true across the industry, big, small, startup. Uh, uh, and the data in here comes from clinical studies, and that clinical protocol goes into clinical studies. Clinical study, when it's over, become a clinical study reports, and these clinical study report from where these have been composed of, drafted, is put into some place called clinical called module summaries. It's not only clinical summaries goes there. There are many other summaries which goes there. So in a typical phase 3 clinical study, which we call pivotal study, pivotal is the word you can see here, that pivotal study, if you see that what it does, that it starts with the qualified patient defined by the inclusion and exclusion criteria uh, um, taken into the protocol. There is an experimental arm, and parallelly there is a complete comparator arm, which could be a placebo, or for oncology there could be a standard of practice, or for some therapeutic areas that can be the thing. So uh, So it's these are generally stratified, randomized, double-blind, multi-center, and large patient population studies wherever feasible. In some indications, which is rarely a disease indication, large population is not possible. So it's all of these are predefined, and the evaluables are primary endpoints, which are already negotiated to be accepted by health authorities. The secondary endpoints are in the same way, and safety profile end to end. So this is the example of one study I have given, but in the course of clinical development, there are multiple studies like that. It could be anything between 5 to 18 plus studies. So when you are thinking about clinical submission, you are trying to create a clinical story package based on these reports. And these clinical study reports are not an easy task. It's a SME dependent, very conscious, resource intensive, and time intensive thing. So how can we gain efficiency? So if we ask the question to ourselves that you develop CSRs by utilizing AI? Can you develop safety narratives by using AI? I think the answer now would be yes, it's not optimized to the level that we want to optimize this technology, but the answer would be yes. So in the CSR, there are two parts mainly. One is methodological part, which is predefined. Whatever is defined in the protocol, that's going to be one-to-one transposition. So you can see that there is a scope of AI to cleverly take the content from the protocol and bring it straight to the CSR document. Of course, the grammar should be changed, because in the protocol it would be will be, shall be, are, and in this case it would be where, was, this kind of thing, because everything is done. So that can be transported in a technological manner using artificial intelligence. And then the data section. So in the data section, generally you have three things. One is demography, disposition, baseline characteristic, prior medications, anti-cancer or prior treatment medication, treatment-specific medication, compliance, safety, certain standard efficacy endpoints. So there is three sections. One is about the patient characteristic, disposition, and the patient characteristic. The second is efficacy, and third is safety. That is true for across the indication and, of course, across the company. So can we do something that this information can be constructed and the verbiage would be written in the documents so that we as human, when the first draft is being um, created by artificial intelligent use technology, and we can just review the document the way we want to tell the story. So basically you have the and the platter delivered to you, and you are just tweaking this thing, adding a little bit salt or sauce or pepper and things like that. Can you do something like that? The answer to that is yes, we can do that actually. So uh, oh, so in the AI, the way we can do that, we can use a technology. I mean, we can use a lot more, but at the baseline, we can use a technology called natural language processing, which has two parts, natural language generation and natural language understanding, feeding the technology the kind of data we want to feed from the statistician and data management, and the way they need to interpret the data. Because as I told you, in most of the studies, there are two arms. And if we could feed the information to find the imbalance between two arms, and with the attributes that there is, they should be able to give us the result in terms of the language that we want to get in the first draft. So in the submission package is now being prepared through the CSR and the safety narratives by automatically generating the language rather than somebody writing it in a very tedious manner and first draft, second draft, third draft to review. So let me go to the next slide. And the thing I just told you is being kept here in a figurative manner, that we are putting the data there, the data is being mapped, AI selection has been done, and then verbiage is being delivered. And this verbiage delivery can be matured, the program can be matured, the natural language understanding can be matured, putting more definition, more attributes, and more differentiation in a manner we want to do. So in summary, I would like to say that artificial intelligence, the AI, can and does bring a tremendous value in reducing time, drafting the first draft of the CSR and the narratives. And these brings a lot of value if you think about just an oncology trial where there could be 200 to 300 narratives, just narratives. And that's the very cost-intensive proposition to create those narratives. If you can automate that process and think about how many projects you have in one therapeutic area versus so many therapeutic area you have in a company, and if you think about across the paradigm, means the industry paradigm, one can do those things. That would be a tremendous efficiency gain in doing the clinical submission, which will in turn shorten the drug development timeline and drug development cost. I purposefully remain focused on clinical submission because I do know that there are, in the discovery area, artificial intelligence is being used now with this in silico technology to identify molecules and all that. That's not the focus of that. So that part is also comes into the drug development cost. So that is the tremendous value that AI could provide if AI becomes more and more mature. There will be investment when it becomes more mature, and it can really help us in gaining efficiencies. That's the story I wanted to share with you, and thank you again for the opportunity that you have given to me to share my thoughts and with some example that what you can actually do in bringing value for the clinical submission, reducing the time and cost. Thank you, AI4.
All right. Thank you, Debhashis. A big virtual round of applause. And if you're watching this, go ahead and do some networking, and we'll see you at the next session. Thank you so much.